How's the quarantine been going, everyone? With not many new sets coming out, so not as many opportunities to talk about new commanders because of it, today I'm going to look back throughout history and rank, as objectively as I can, the power level of every set in Magic ever. So these are only going to focus on sets that introduce new cards. No Chronicles, no reprint sets, none of that. That's not what's interesting. It will involve every single card ever. If I miss one, please tell me. I will occasionally go over reprints if they go and occur in a given set, but I will be ignoring all core sets from after the first few editions, alpha, beta, revised, etc. to M10, because that's when they started printing new cards for core sets exclusively. I'm counting all the first 4 or 5 as one because a lot of them were very badly done sets, so they kept having to give each other sets and cards that were not available in prior ones, so I had to get the most complete set of them all in order to rank them. So the grading system's pretty simple, but it's a little weird. To put it in perspective, it is a 0 to 10 ranking, and 3 is average. A 10 is something that is broken no matter what the context is. It will get banned no matter what the context is. This is pretty controversial in general because this means that things like Yawgmoth's Will and Treasure Cruise will not be getting 10s because in standard environments, they will not be generally very good. However, much less impressive cards like Channel that don't do as much usually, they will be considered 10s because they are broken no matter what the circumstances. Sure thing, you might not have Emrakul in every set. You will have, I don't know, just some terrible 5-mana 4/4, and you just play a 5-mana 4/4 on turn 2. It's still really good. That's what makes Tinker a little awkward. I'm giving Tinker a 9 or I forget if I gave Tinker a 9 or a 10. That card, because I don't think every set even has good artifact. Tolarian Academy gets ranked less than Windfall because of blocks like Theros block. If Tolarian Academy wasn't Theros block, it would be pretty weak. If it was in Maraudon block, that would have been hilarious, though. Windfall is just good no matter what the set is. You can manipulate it just by playing the game and accumulating, slowing your opponent down, or getting a lot of cards in opponent's hand, or just more easily and more importantly, just splashing blue in any aggro deck, just casting a bunch of spells and then refilling your hand. Still broken, still absurd, still just cause your opponent to lose card advantage while you gained it. It's really nasty. That kind of stuff gets a 10 because it gets banned in Legacy anyways. That's why 9s can be more powerful than 10s, but they require more specific circumstances, a la Legacy Modern, or just a larger set. Treasure Cruise is a 9, hardest 9 ever. It was in a standard set where that was partially dedicated to filling up your graveyard and it didn't do much in standard at the time. Meanwhile, in any extended, longer format, it was banned, it was broken, it was Ancestral Recall on turn 2. 8 and 9 is a very large power difference. Most of them are. But this one might be arguably the largest. 8s are cards that are staples in Eternal formats, but they don't get banned everywhere. They're the Force of Wills, they're the Brainstorms. Sometimes they're just what defines a modern format. Shocklands, Path to Exile, Thoughtseizes, Fatal Pushes. 7s are basically really good in Legacy, or Vintage, or Modern. Maybe they're staples in Modern, and there's just better versions of the card in older formats. Sometimes they break Pioneer. Who knows? 7 can also be the partner in crime for various combos that get banned. Maybe a Squirrel Nest gets a combo at number 7 because it helped Earthbound break Legacy. Stuff like that. 6 gets more iffy. 6 is usually Modern reserved. If it appears a few times in Vintage or Legacy or Modern, it might get a 6. If it's like one Modern deck, one Pioneer deck, it's a 5. In addition to that, there is also the Pauper format. Pauper is generally, if it's a Pauper staple, that's a 7. If it sees a lot of play in Pauper, it's a 6. I consider Pauper and Modern to be on the same power level, generally speaking. Some Modern decks can beat some Pauper decks and vice versa. I don't think one format's necessarily better than the other, but I could be wrong. 5 is standard playable.
Even if it wasn't standard playable at the time, there was a standard where it easily could have seen play if we're taking into account the average standard. And we're also that's a very confusing ranking because sometimes you have to be biased towards recent standards, but sometimes you have to be biased towards the standards at the time. For example, Flametongue Kavu. If it wasn't just such a menace at the time, I probably would have ranked it a 4 or something, but it's a 5 because it was just such a menace at the time. Same with Psychotog, Wild Mongrel, Noose Constrictor, etc., etc. 4 is just kind of, doesn't see play anywhere. It's a fun, good card. Play it in Commander, play it in Casual. It's good, it's just not broken. 3 is just kind of average. You are a bear. You are not bad, but I won't play you in an average Commander deck unless something very weird happens with the synergy or I'm memeing. 2 is you are below the curve. You are not up to snuff. You are not marginally below the curve like a 1 is, but you are a generally weak card. 1s are either marginally below the curve, kind of useless, they're so niche it's ridiculous. 0 have no value. There is no reason to play a 0 in anything ever, unless it maybe draft, but then you are already losing if you are picking a 0. So those are my rankings. Enough dawdling. Let's go on for Alpha and the remaining sets. Alpha, Beta, Revised, I'm combining them all, you know. Before discussing directly what Alpha, Revised, and whatnot entails, I'm going to go over 3 categories. The general impact of the game, the general consensus before ranking, and my consensus. And afterwards, I'll show you the grade I gave the set. So, obviously, first set ever, introduced the game. People were sloppy as hell. People thought rares meant that some people could get them, some people couldn't. So they did rank rarity much more powerful than commons, i.e. Ancestral Recall being the most infamous example in the game, given that it was the only rare in the cycle. God, wouldn't it be funny if Ancestral Recall was a common? That would have been so cool. Kind of feel like it was a dick move that they knew it was so OP, but yeah, they're like, oh, print it rare because they just blatantly thought blue was better at the time. This was reinforced like permanently in Urza Saga, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The weirdest thing was how risk-taking it was. Like, they made rules just to break them in this set. I don't really get why they do that. It seemed like for an intro set, they'd be like, well, maybe they didn't think there'd be much after that set. Who knows? But the thing is, the Power 9 isn't even the best part of the set. Oh my god, everything, there's so much more broken shit that you don't even think about. Balance, broken. Power 9, obviously, all 10s. And, channel 10, fast bond 10. What kind of format wouldn't you want to be able to dump your, like, 4 lands on turn 1? Or 3 lands? That's honestly the worst case scenario, is you keep a fast bond in a standard hand, you play another 2 lands because you kept it because you're smart. You have 2 untapped lands on turn 1, you're going to have 3 on turn 2, and you can probably kill the opponent really quick. Oh, what about Demonic Tutor? What kind of format would that not be good in? You'd have to be in a format where every card is trash. And guess what? You'd find the best of the trash and get it into your hand if Demonic Tutor was in it. So that's absurd. The dual lands, I'm ranking them as 9. It's a little strange of me. The lands get very strange because the bannings are, that you don't ban lands, generally speaking. The dual lands are strictly better than basic lands. You are not supposed to do that. That is broken. The only disadvantage they were supposed to have isn't even that impressive. Their disadvantage is nothing. They are strictly better than basic lands. So are the Moxen. It's weird because this is the only set in history with cards you can genuinely call strictly better than basic land. And it has 2 cycles of them. Well, okay, Snowlands are strictly better than basic lands at this point, let's be real. But that also was introduced pretty early on. Then, Modern Horizons came like 50 years later, made them retroactively stronger. Not even that, Cold Snap as well, with everything it was doing with Scred and whatnot. The bad cards were actually kind of average in this set. I don't know why. I was expecting there to be a lot more 0s in the set. Most people were probably expecting a more accurate prediction than I did. I'm guessing most people would have expected this to be one of, if not the most powerful set of all time. This is the only, this is one of two sets that I found so far with an average power level that is higher than I'd put this in Commander. Most of them, even the best sets, most of them are like a 3 point something. They're average, obviously. They are on the curve because that's what the curve is. It makes sense, obviously. But this one's average is just better than Commander. Once again, only one other set I've discovered so far. Only one other Legacy set has that. I've done all the Legacy legal sets. I mean, at least the non-modern legal ones, obviously. You know what I'm talking about. It's mostly due to the fact that not only does it have the dual lands, but like every other card is just so broken. It's broken no matter where it is balanced. Even some cards aren't that amazing, like Black Vice, Mind Warp. They're still good. Those are in most great sets. There's like the good cards get overlooked. The ones that are pretty good in Legacy, but these aren't even that good in Legacy. I'm gonna foreshadow this, but Urza Saga is a lot better than this set. Spoiler warning. Oh, that was episode 1. I'm not going to introduce the rankings every single time. The weak cards weren't even as weak as one would expect, like Hornet Blaster or whatever it's called, because every set has cards on that level. A lot of cards on that level. If you want to see my specific rankings, the Google Docs will be in the description below. Either way, hope you have a good quarantine, and I'll see you next time. By the way, not counting Chaos Orb or any of the anti-cards except for that one contract from below because that's just a 10. Other than that, they can't be really ranked effectively.